Welcome back, or welcome to the Yogi Roth Show. How great is ball? And today is episode 160. And it's a big episode because there's a lot going on with this podcast. I want to start off by just having a ton of gratitude to every single person that has listened, has shared, has commented, has reviewed, has shot me a DM or an email or a text and saying that these conversations that we've had over the last 5.5 years have impacted them on some form or another. I reflect back on this podcast because there's a big change happening in this podcast. This podcast, you'll see in your feed, will begin to change. It's going to change titles. It's going to be called The It Factory, where I'm going to take a deep dive into Pac-12 football players, alums, coaches, personalities, and do what I've been doing for the last 5.5 years, which is unearth their story, especially for athletes. I've said it many times, which is let's take the helmet off and get to know your soul. But for me, I want to reflect for a few minutes before we transition over to a bunch of Pac-12 guests who I think are going to blow your minds and inspire you on a bunch of levels, because I want to reflect on this. When I think back to when I started this thing on March 25th, 2016, I recorded my first episode. It was with my mom. And what's really unique about this is that I'm coming up on the 1-year anniversary of her passing away. And at the time, I wanted to have that as my first episode because I did a film called Life in a Walk about my dad. And I was like, I got to do something for mom, right? But now here I am, 5.5 years since that conversation and almost a year since she passed away. And I'm so grateful that podcasting platforms were created because I have that conversation to always go back to. And that really means a lot to me. And I know when I post about that or bring that episode back up on social media, so many people say so many beautiful things about her, or have some empathy towards what I went through, because you've gone through your own sense of loss in your life. So that's not lost upon me. And then as I scroll through the episodes and I see guys like Kevin Carroll or guys like Jared Goff, Max Brown, Sam Darnold, there's a lot of athletes that have been on this. Jed Fish, David Shaw, so many coaches have been on this thing. I look back and I'm really proud of it, of how it was just an idea to be a home base for me to have conversations with high performers, guys like Dr. Michael Gervais, Trent Dilfer, Spencer Rattler, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, elite quarterbacks in this league, elite players on the West Coast, elite minds around just forward-thinking thoughtfulness and mindfulness. I'm really proud of it. And I hope you are as well, as you look at the library of 160 episodes. And now as we spin it forward, I'm really pumped because, as you know, when you're doing this thing and you're starting a podcast, many of you can relate, you're rolling on your own, right? You're editing on your own. You find music on your own. And every so often I would find a producer or a creative to help bolt on and share these stories. But ultimately, I've been driving this thing with nobody really in the passenger seat. And now I'm really excited. We have a producer, TJ Brassil. He's going to be next to me the whole time at the Pac-12 Networks. We're doing it in a collaboration with Blue Ox Films. You know I love them. Taylor Kavanaugh. He's been on this show numerous times. We did the series All American Stories. We've done a bunch of projects over the years. Of course, a former walk-on wide receiver as well. So really pumped to add so many dimensions of this show that never existed before. The Pac-12 Networks is going to operate this podcast. You'll be able to watch it on video on the Pac-12 Networks platforms, social media. We'll be kicking out elements, and we got a team now. So while I'm losing the title, the Yogi Roth Show, How Great is Ball, I'm gaining a team. And I've always felt, and well, at least I've learned as a professional, you really can't accomplish anything special if you're doing it all by yourself. So I'm really proud of that. I know this podcast grew with all of you, and I want to say big thanks to you as we move forward. So what is the new show going to be? It's titled The It Factory. And as you know, the It Factor, I've said it many times, it's the most overused and undefinable phrase in all of sport. And if you have it, everybody knows it. It's got qualities that many people desire, but very few possess. But I want to dive into what is it? Who has it? And how do they even get it? From their coaches, from their parents, from their upbringings, from their teammates, from their inner dialogue. How did they develop that thing? And that's what I'm here to do. We're going to take the helmet off of the top performers in Pac-12 football. Coaches, players, alums, esteemed guests, as I referenced earlier, and dive into what makes them tick and hopefully pull out a lesson for you to apply to your life, your family's life, your team's life, and so on and so forth. So with that, I thank you. I'm so excited to move forward and make sure you continue to share this thing, because I really believe this podcast, this platform, this conversation is just getting rolling. So with that, welcome to the second iteration of this podcast. This time, the title is real simple, and you know what it's all about. The It Factory. Welcome, and I'm thankful that you're along for the ride. Peace.